Welcome back everyone to the tutorial on Advanced Tactics Gold. This is episode number 5. The beginning part of this episode is going to be somewhat recapping or at least redoing a lot of the mechanics we've already covered because we'll need to make some movements, we're going to adjust production, we're going to rearrange headquarters, etc. And then I'm going to change production, try to end this quickly, and you can consider this kind of like your recap. And we're going to start thinking as if we are actually playing this game, not just doing a tutorial. So we'll start covering some of the strategies involved. I mean, first and foremost, we can see that this is a really bad situation for these units in the front. You don't want to leave your city. Obviously, even having your city involved in the fighting is bad because there's a chance that some of the structure can take damage from any kind of artillery or... I don't know if mortars do structural damage. We can see if I click on combat stats, general stats, yes. So there are anti-structure points in the general stats under mortars. We see that there's 5. AT guns have 0. So the mortars themselves may actually damage our city, which is bad. So we'd want to push these guys away so they weren't actually attacking into Kiev. But I still want to leave one of my units to, I don't know, kind of show an analogy, or not an example, just an example of what it's like to be attacked from multiple sides, how much more effective that is. And then hopefully in episode 6 or 7, we'll get into the situation where you actually start using artillery and stuff like that to produce a very effective attack. So, but let's just start by moving. I'm going to zoom back out. Let's just start by moving my forces to the front. We're definitely a little bit weak in the south. And I want to move these units in a way which kind of prevents a further push onto my home ground. So it's okay to give up some territory, but when you get close enough that the enemy can attack your cities, that's a problem because that already is the possibility that they're reducing your production. So we're going to swing like this and try to secure the edge here. This is going to cause them to be really jutting out. We are giving up the road to, what road is this? To Rostov, but we can reinforce it in 2 ways. One, we could put this unit here, or we could put this unit a little bit more in reserve by putting it here. I think we're going to put it here because on the off chance that they have an armored unit, we want their armored unit to face zone of control all along the road. I mean, in some sense, it'd be almost wiser for us to make sure we have a unit on the road. So, I mean, we're playing with infantry here, but knowing that we ourselves have plenty of armor available in our home headquarters, there's nothing to stop the Germans from having the same. So let's actually protect our road, and let's see. If they were here, which we would have seen, so if they're here, they can move 10 and then 20, but it'll be 30. It'll cost 30 and then 30 for them to move in enemy territory. I mean, let's not risk it. Let's just move this unit here to block the road. Otherwise, the enemy armor, if they were here, they can move 10. And then from 10, this would cost another 20. So that would be 30. It would be 40 if we were in either of these hexes just to prevent, because the zone of control. So zone of control is pretty helpful. Anyway, they'd probably still be able to get by us on the next turn and into Rostov, and we don't have any defensive forces in the area, so I'm just using the move key, M on my keyboard. Anytime this gray overlay comes up, you know that I'm using the move key, so we'll keep moving these forces forward. And I feel like these 4 units is good to counter the offensive if it swings south, but we're still vulnerable in the middle area. The idea for us was going to be to attack in the north. So we still want to consider how to do that. We have stacked up the units here. Let's take the lower combat effective ones. This one only has 13 rifles. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave. I was going to say let's spread them out a little bit, but I actually want to leave the damage units on the roads to allow them to be resupplied by the Supreme Command, who can only reach units via rail. So we have to stay on the rail for resupply. That's if we had units in our secondary, our first front, the immediately superior headquarters, like the HQ of these units, actually. We could transfer units in directly just by moving them, but we can't do that right now because, one, we don't have any units here, and two, we don't have any trucks or anything to take them to the front anyway. Your units can move the same, I think we already covered this, but your units can move the actual distance they need to travel just by using action points, you know, when they're under quote-unquote own power. But we don't have any units here, and this unit, for example, is too far away. So we're just going to move this unit down. Let's see. I'm going to change the headquarter of this unit. So let me make sure I'm reviewing this. This is kind of a review, you know. So what I did there was H, clicked on this unit, and then spacebar is the same as the check mark. That gives this unit. Now its readiness is reduced, but I'm going to go ahead and double up the number of units here so that hopefully we still present. Yeah, that wasn't very smart. We simply moved a unit down and then moved him back up. This one. So we can't reinforce this unit because that was a silly movement pattern, but that's okay. I think we'll move this unit into a staging area. I'm not really sure if he's going to be needed further south or not, but airfields are always good things to protect. So we'll just kind of wait one more turn before we commit him to the south or to the north. In fact, we could even move him to this forested hex. It really wouldn't change anything. And sometimes just having your forces visible creates an additional pressure on the enemy force. Let's not worry about it. I'm just going to leave him here because I don't want to overthink things. It's more important to cover game mechanics than to play strategically intelligent. Alright, we're going to switch this guy. Again, H, click here, and instead of hitting this check mark, I just hit space. So that's how you can quickly do these things. Now let's actually get into unit transfers. So remember my kind of cycle things. Do we want to do anything here? Well, yeah, I guess we do. We want to move. Let's move this unit back to here. And let's move this unit back to the city. And I'm actually going to pull my headquarters out of the city because I don't want them to take casualties. But I definitely want to defend the city. In fact, it looks like we can get a four-sided attack on this guy just by going here. So let's go ahead and pull this guy back into the city to double defend it, which is a very smart decision. You, of course, want to make sure your city doesn't fall. In which case, I think we send this guy south because we're looking a little bit fragile. Again, I'm going to switch headquarters over to this guy. We lose the hand cards there, but that's fine. I want to switch this guy's headquarters as well. Just preemptively, that way he's starting to recover his readiness, and this one, by the time they get to the front. So it's good to, when you decide where your units are going to be, which front they're going to be at, you want to switch them to the correct headquarters, ASAP. Alright, good. So all of our frontline headquarters, all of our frontline units are now attached to either the first front or the second front. I've noticed, however, that the HQ colors are a little bit similar. This is like almost like a teal blue, and this is almost like a aqua green. They're so similar. We should actually do some changing of colors here. The main way I do my headquarter units, you can do it any way you want. I mean, just try to make the colors visible for yourself. But you can click, when you have a headquarters selected, you can click this bar, and now it gives you the little pop-up asking which color you'd like to use. So I'd like to use a neutral color for my headquarters. So I'll use gray. Now these won't really update. I found that this is one of the things you have to do plus minus for. These won't update until I zoom out, zoom in. So this is a blue, but let's make this a more definite blue. So it's very hard to mistake it for anything else. That looks like a pretty obvious blue to me. In fact, I may want to make that just a little bit lighter. So it's even brighter. And, oh, what do you know? These are starting to switch. Okay, so that to me is a very clear blue. We could make it even a little bit more blue, I think. Maybe this way. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so if I zoom in, right now it didn't update, but if I zoom in, that's already we can see the difference between the green and blue, which is better. But let's also make this one more of a green. We get this really bright green. And again, if we make it brighter, I think it'll just accent the color difference even more. And now what we have is a clearly blue and a clearly green headquarters. And I actually think this is a really great part of the game, that you can change the different colors. You can end up having, 4 or 5 different headquarters with all kinds of different colors. And that's pretty cool. Okay, so we're done with changing colors. We've moved our units. It's now time for to transfer in the typical turn rotation fashion. So we're going to move some units to the front. Now we know that these guys are actually on the front, and they already have low readiness anyways. We see that the riflemen here have a readiness of only 63. What we can do is actually encourage, this one has readiness of 61, so it's extremely low. The readiness is still going to drop when we send reinforcements, because by sending them directly, we're doing both the headquarters and the new unit inside the same headquarters exchange at the same time, which means that we are going to take the penalty down to 25. So any units we transfer directly to a unit that is not part of our headquarters, and it's also being transferred out of our unit, so it takes the 25% readiness penalty to begin with, it's going to get the full 75% effect immediately, which means that off of the 100, they'll be arriving at only a readiness of 25, which is not good. So we'll definitely prefer to transfer units either to the immediate headquarters first and let them regain some readiness before transferring them in, or transfer them to, actually I think that's really the best option. We want to make sure that we don't transfer such low readiness units to the front. This is going to be an exception just because, 1, we'll be showing the mechanic, and 2, this unit is so low on forces that even the additional riflemen at a lower readiness may still increase the combat effectiveness of the unit. Plus, we're not expecting too many attacks up in the north. So we're going to transfer. Let me do that with the key, with the mouse. T for transfer. You can click through the different units in a hex if you want to select one. We want the lower one. This one only has 13 rifles. So we'll use some of our rail capacity here to help resupply. If we give them 17, they'll be back up to their readiness, their full strength of 30. And you can see that technically that changed them from 49 to 53 in readiness, in combat value. Which means that although their readiness is down to 40, having 30 at a readiness of 40 is better than having 13 at a readiness of 60. This is just simple math. You can exactly calculate what 30 times 0.4 is and what 13 times 0.6 is, and you should get a higher number for the 30 times 0.4. 30 times 0.4 is easy to do, it's just 12, but I don't know what 13 times 0.6 is. It's definitely lower than 12, though. Okay, that's that. Now let's start creating a lot of backup forces for these headquarters, just like we started to do on the German side. And then we'll also start creating new units in the same manner and moving those to the front. So we're going to give a lot of riflemen. We want riflemen on the main unit. So let's use just about 3,000. That seems like maybe even too much. Let's just use... this unit's kind of close to the front. It almost makes more sense for us only to create new units and transfer them directly, like by moving the new divisions forward, because it's only going to save us like one turn, and it's going to cost us a lot of readiness. So I'm not sure. In the min-max scheme of things, it might be more efficient just to create new units with infantry here and send them to the front. But I'm going to do it this way. So we'll send 40. What is not going to be faster is sending artillery there. So we will send 2 artillery, and that's going to cost us quite a bit of rail capacity, but that's going to give our artillery time to regain readiness. And I've talked about not having horses to carry those artillery, which is a really good point still. So we can advance the artillery on their own. They do move on their own, but it's so much faster with horses. However, we don't need the horses to have readiness. They don't need the readiness in order to get a good bombardment off. So if you have low readiness, low action point horses, that's going to restrict the artillery plus horse units movement. But if you get into a bombardment situation, it'll only look at the action points and the readiness of the artillery in the division. So, just important to note. Okay, so we're done transferring here. Let's transfer. We can just click around any unit we want to transfer to. So it says this one is not connected, we can't transfer. But we can transfer because this one is still connected via rail. This is another great unit to put some artillery in because they're actually close enough to the front to have supporting fire. Remember, artillery only needs to be 2 hexes away to fire. So we'll put 2 artillery in. And likewise, we're going to want to put a lot of riflemen in. It looks like we can't get quite as many as I was hoping. So we probably used a few too many of our rail capacity. Oh boy, I have an annoying horn person. I just apologize about that, but we'll just have to push through this. So we'll transfer those riflemen, as many as we can. That leaves us with very little rail capacity, but we can still create new divisions. We're going to have these guys part of this division, because remember, this is how we lose the least amount of action points, our readiness. And doing the same trick, we're going to use our light tanks to transfer a lot of riflemen to the front. So each one can carry 5, so we can carry 20 riflemen. Now this armored division, once we have it created and it takes the readiness below to 75, we know the attack should come in the north, so we'll send one of these guys this way. HQ, I'm sorry, I was using the HQ button. We're just going to continue to do it like this. Now M to move. We can get this guy all the way to the front. Let's stage him back in Minx so we can kind of surprise our opponent with the sudden appearance of armor. He needs a turn to recover anyway, so it's useless to bring him right to the front. Let's do that again. New formation. Headquarters. Transfer. Light tank. 20 rifles. Move this guy to the front. We'll move this one down to Kursk because it's actually, or sorry, Kiev, but it's really important we hold this city. So I think it's worth even exposing we have armor. Because this is a frontline unit, I'm not going to, even though it doesn't have, it's, you know, barely in supply, in range of the home HQ. I'm not going to change it because the 75 readiness is more important. Well, I have to sneeze real fast. Sorry about that. So we'll leave this one on 75 readiness and wait for another opportunity to exchange to the green headquarters. We can continue doing this, so N, click, space, transfer, but I think you guys get the idea. So I'll just make one more unit like this. Move this guy down here. Whoops, see we had the headquarters selected even though this unit is appearing on the top. This is kind of a bug when you create a new unit. It creates it on the top, although you're still selecting your HQ. So if you just click, now it's showing the correct one. So the correct one is selected down here, not on the map. Now we hit move, we can get to here. I am going to switch the headquarters to this one. So good, we have good reinforcements approaching at least. And we did transfer some artillery here, which will be helpful to prevent, you know, any kind of a, or at least help us to counterattack next turn, but certainly soften up the enemy forces. All right, now let's go to production to try to do everything in one turn. So this is basically our first full turn. We've learned a lot. Production overview, we're going to do the same thing. I think that we should set Minsk to this HQ, the first front. Now Minsk has the blue bar instead of the gray bar. Gray, blue. And this one, Kiev is going to switch its production, which hopefully it retains, to our second front. Oh, I just made a mistake. I did the set unit. So, okay, so this one has a very low readiness now, but at least it's defending in the city. What I wanted to do was select this HQ, but I wasn't thinking clearly. And this. Now that switched from gray to green. So Kiev is now supplying the second front directly. Go back to any city, the production key, producing. Now Kiev is our more defensive front, so we're going to switch to the same thing, 50 and 50 for machine guns. We're going to let Minks be our offensive one from now on. So we'll switch this one to light tanks. Rostov, we're going to take off tanks. I'm actually going to build some fighters with this one. So we'll get 4 fighters here. We have too many supplies being produced in Moscow. We can actually double check that. Moscow, what is the... Yeah, so we're setting out 1600 or so. Statistics says that its own supply consumption is about 400. So we're looking at, like, let's say 2500 is a rough estimate of our supply usage, just to put a little bit of extra supply somewhere in. That means that we are probably okay, and we'll just monitor this. I'll just look at the video again next time, but we'll just take a look and see how the stockpile does. It's at 8300, and we'll look at it, what it goes to next turn. Okay, so back to production. Obviously, this is one thing I want to mention again. If you set it to lower than 100% total production, the game gives you no warning. So make sure that you double check your production, make sure it's producing as much as it should before you end the turn. Okay, so we're actually going to build some dive bombers here as well. I'm going to get 4 of those. And then I also want to get some trains to increase that. We're not going to be able to get political points out of this one, most likely. So we'll just take this down to... Okay, trains could be here. Let's switch this over to horses, because we need horses. I think maybe 20 horses would be sufficient. What else do we need? I think we need some more political points. And let's see, what are we missing? We have trains, we have horses, we have tanks, airplanes now, which is good, so I can showcase that next time. I think we're okay. Let's just go with political points for the rest of everything to try to get our research up a bit. Okay, so we're producing enough supply, I think, a good amount of political points. This is actually quite sizable. Still, a very low number of rifles. Of course, this is something you would produce more of if you were playing seriously, because once the war starts, you're really trying to you just squeak out political points where you can, but usually you'll never have a turn with this many political points unless you're playing against the AI, like I do. I like to play against the AI, and I try to grab... I make it a little harder on myself in the short term to try to grab a technological edge in the long term. But against a human opponent, it's probably going to be impossible to do that. They will just overrun you. You're going to need riflemen everywhere. We have enough horses to start fitting all of our artillery pieces with good mobility. Still getting a few light tanks, fighters, dive bombers, machine guns, trains. Everything looks good here. So this is basically our first full complete turn. I think there's nothing more I need to say. So on the next turn, we're actually going to start to cover supply, how to actually supply units, like how the supply works. So this little cursor and how you follow supply. And then hopefully I can do that very briefly on the German turn, and then we can switch over to the Russian turn to talk about air power. So that'll either be the next video or the next 2 videos. And that'll probably bring this series to a close. So, thanks for watching. If you want any other things covered before I go, just leave a message on the comments. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.